here's the headline. It's how can we trust our own government? And this is kind of alarming. And it's fairly clear to me reading this now, like, basically there's a lot of debate about whether or not 15 should have been on the ballot at all, because apparently it was it wasn't a legal thing to do according to the petitioners, who the protest petitioners, and the reasoning was that it's because it was trying to deal with TNOZ 1 and TNOZ 2 at the same time, as opposed to saying like, okay, well, we're going to have an amendment for the, neighborhood overlay zone 1, and then we'll do a separate one for zone 2, or, the one will have, say, amendment 15 be for the lot frontage and setbacks, that increase where they wanted to change that. I think it was from 10 to 15 feet. But because the way they had submitted it was sort of like they were trying to correct both overlay districts at the same time. The protest petition argued that made it illegal, and the people who submitted Amendment 15 were kind of like, well, hey, like, if there was a problem with it, why didn't the town tell us when that happened? So they sued the town. And so the town sort of decided to countersue, because the way they had explained it was that it made it so that everything would be arbitrated by a judge. Like, it was just like everybody's answers would get addressed. Like, it wouldn't just like reverting to an original state of like, oh, we'll just throw it out because it's illegal. It wouldn't have answered any of these other sort of like bureaucratic questions that have arisen about the law itself, like the actual statutes, because now we're getting into like, originally it was about like this particular zoning law, and then it became about how you legislate zoning laws, period, in a lot of ways. And the discussion has been blown out into this really wide-hitting thing that's addressing like people are using to attack like the town government, or the select board, or really singling people out and just going after them. And it's obviously super nasty at this point, and contentious, and I've covered this quite a bit, and I have my own personal stance on this stuff that I can share on a different, I will totally, I'm getting there. But this is important to address because when I look at this article and the other one, this was directly written by Loretta Laurentis and David Bonacci, who were the first two people named in the lawsuit from the town. Now, the reason that was, and this is like public knowledge ahead of this, the reason that was the case is because they were the first two names like on the filing petition 415. So that was just the response. Like, it, that's how that works. And the issue that I take here is that a lot of this is coming from this article right here. Okay. This is on Granite Rock, which, if you don't know what Granite Rock is, it's like a conservative blog in the state and I mean like really conservative, like libertarian. Okay. And recently the Peterborough Republican Committee chair has started like writing consistently for them. And he's also using the Republican Committee Facebook page to just reshare every article that he writes on Granite Rock. So he's effectively like funneling this media consumption to people that are likely to agree with that point of view already. And the general tone of this blog as a whole is really oppositional in a not necessarily like good faith kind of way. And a lot of that can just sort of, you can see it in the writing. But he had filed some Freedom of Information Request Acts to like just to see the correspondence between people, because he asserts in here, you know, he used the words, who authorized suing two residents on behalf of the town? Doesn't seem like it was anyone that was elected, capitalized elected. So this is just like, okay. Doesn't seem like anyone that was elected to represent the town. So, and what's basically what you're seeing here is that here's a letter written to Bill Taylor, right? And we're gonna get to this in a minute, but this is sort of the real bit here to talk about. It says, Bill, I would like to know why you, as a select board member, authorized Rodney Bartlett and John Radigan to file a civil suit on behalf of the town against me, and my husband personally, and only against the two of us? What is the purpose of this action? Why are you having the town sue its own citizens? Because we signed a petition? And after the select board lectured the town about all the divisiveness and need for us to work together towards engagement and understanding and not take new actions. Suing two townspeople is going to promote goodwill and trust in the town's intentions. Feels like intimidation and bullying instead, and only makes me more distrusting of the town and more concerned about a serious lack of transparency and open communication between town government and the people it's supposed to be serving. What else is happening behind the scenes that deserves more scrutiny? I would appreciate a response as soon as possible regarding the reasons you agreed to file a suit against me and my husband. So, look, like, now, hold on. I just want to be clear. Authorized Rodney Bartlett and John Radigan to file a civil suit on behalf of the town. I'm pretty sure that answers Chris Maidman's question of who authorized the suing. Well, actually, I guess I take that back. It doesn't necessarily answer the authorized thing, but I mean, look, like, Bill Taylor's immediate response is to just say, what is this about? Because from all I can tell, I think he's kind of caught off guard by it. But, you know, and I actually, so I spoke with Bill today, and we'll go over that in a minute. But what I would like to pull up first, though, is Bill's response, which, like, honestly was like, you know, there was an incredible amount of support for what he wrote in the paper today, and it was accompanied by a formal statement made by the select board itself. And actually, you know what? I was going to show this on I was going to show it on the website, but I think I will actually. Let me pull up the e-edition just because I want to show the actual paper for a second so folks can see what I mean here about how, like, okay, so let's see here. All right, so pop this over. Alrighty, so this is the, just so we're clear, this is the actual, like, print right here. So you've got alrighty, so right here you have the select board's response, and then right here you have Bill Taylor's response. So we'll pull this. Alrighty, so let me just hop this back over to the other side. So move that there. Okay, so we'll go back to the main site and we'll pull open. Where is it? Here we go. So here's Bill Taylor's piece that he had done to address this. And, you know, like, it's clear that Bill's responding to the articles written in the paper, which are a measured, like a more measured way of presenting what was said in that email. But the reality is the language in that email was pretty intense, and it's a lot of very accusatory stuff. I mean, like, it's got, you know, she had used multiple exclamation marks, multiple question marks, asking, you know, a lot of, like, if there's some sort of, you know, agenda going on behind the scenes. And, like, I've sort of individually spoken with each of the selectmen about this, and it's important to note that they don't make, like, any money off of doing that job. Okay, that is, like, straight volunteer work. All right, they're just doing it because they care, for real, like that. So, and I encourage anybody to go have a conversation with any of our 3 town selectmen. They are really just the truly pleasant people to talk to. And based off of my communications with all of them, they're working really well together. Like, I don't, you know, I didn't even get through conversations. I certainly wouldn't expect any of them to snap about any of the other ones in any kind of way, especially knowing that I'm going to come on here and might talk about it a little bit. But, like, at no point in time did I get any whiff of, like, oh no, there's, like, or oh, I'm concerned or anything. No, they were always like, yeah, it's going well. We're having a really productive team effort. And so I think what Bill sort of caught here is that it's it's hard to say what it is, because like and I'm not gonna like, I'll pull that back up in a minute, but it's important to note here that like when you start lobbing accusations like that at like town officials, okay, like it's one thing to like shout about the libs because you hate them on Facebook, and just I don't know, say whatever nasty shit you want to say about Nancy Pelosi. Like, I don't care, but when it comes to your town, okay, and increasingly, national and even state politics are getting more, and like they're very zero sum these days, which is like, I personally think that's a condition that was like somebody decided that they were going to turn it into a zero sum game, and that it's just been that way ever since. And because once someone does that, you're kind of forced to play it that way. And the concern here is that this type of language and having citizens just jump out and attack their elected officials like this is basically doing that same thing on a local level. And when you do that, you're going to, that polarization is going to occur on a local level. So that right there is what tears apart communities. Like the fabric of the community itself will be torn to shreds over this, because it's going to just like force people into very specific silos of thought. And part of the reason that normally I wouldn't want to spend a lot of time talking about Granite Grok on this channel, but there's also a certain part of me that feels like I gotta mention this stuff, because like, if I've talked to a lot of people that want to write off a lot of what gets said over there, and while I understand that take, and I understand the not wanting to give a platform to people with opinions you disagree with, like, yeah, I hear that, but it's also important to critique things. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to critique the idea that somebody who's writing for that publication is also managing that Facebook page, which is then giving a direct channel to a political constituency with rhetoric that will likely radicalize it further. Okay, like that's and I don't know, man. Maybe I'm doing the same thing with this show. I can't really I can't speak to that. I'm trying not to. Because I wanna invite people to challenge whatever I say and whatever I think. Like I swear I try to say this all the time. Because I think this will get boring if this doesn't happen. Like, if this is going to be a local show, then I like, let's do it, folks. But I'm not showing up in the Peterborough Democrats group every day and every week and posting a link to these streams. I don't necessarily share every single video that I do in the Peterborough group. I don't want to force this down anyone's throat. I want people to share it organically and to get it out there. And look, I certainly won't trash on what he's doing. I think there's nothing illegal about it. But it's how you get people dragged further into an ideology. This is how online radicalization of youth works. This is how, I mean, it's, Chris Maidman is clearly an incredibly smart guy because he understands how to utilize these tools to transform people that might have had certain viewpoints into people that now have much more staunch viewpoints. And I mean, I can't speak to how much that's happening, but at any rate, that's a really important point here, because when I look at like the Granite Grok article was published on, I think it was the 20, I'll have to look it up, but I think it came on, let's see here. Yeah, so that was published on the 26th. And those viewpoints articles came after that. And they echo like to pop back over to the original, I'm going to switch this over. We'll have a look at some of these. So look, like, who's running the town? Since the demise of its traditional town meeting, the government of Peterborough has become remoter from its citizens. Okay. Ignoring public input, wasting taxpayer funds by foolishly suing the McDowell colony over its tax status. We can have a conversation about that on a different day. Yeah, well, I'll have to get into that at another time, because there's a lot more to that than I think it's an oversimplification, but it's neither here nor there. It's the specific language that's being used. To say the town is suing two citizens for daring to engage in the democratic process by proposing a zoning amendment to ameliorate worst case scenarios. Okay, look, like, that language slants everything. Now, this is an opinion piece. It's a letter to the editor, and I literally made a post today about how people should be doing this more. Like, this is cool. Like, I'm not saying that this shouldn't be here, because it should. This is absolutely correct. But it is very important to acknowledge exactly why this language is dangerous in the way it frames the argument. Like, dangerous in the sense that, like, it could sway a whole bunch of people to make a decision with a vote that they could learn later they really don't agree with. Like, that's just, that's that. And that's okay. So at any rate, this is a follow-up article to the, to the question Loretta De Laurentiis had asked in the previous, about, how can we trust our own government when it seems to be so difficult to locate that government? Like, I don't know what they mean by locate it. I think, to me, that echoes that same Granite Grok point, who's running the town? This is, it's suggesting that, like, there's not control to be had over what government employees are doing by the select board. And it's just like, that's destroying public faith in your government, in your elected officials, which is, like, I do not want to see the town that I live in be ruled by an angry mob, and that's what this is. So, going back to Bill Taylor's response here, he said, he says here he'll be totally upfront and admits that it hit really hard for him. He goes in to explain in detail here exactly how this all went down. He explains exactly how they were the ones named in the lawsuit, because you can't sue a piece of paper, which is what the actual Amendment 15 is. Like, you have to actually, in a lawsuit, you have to sue an entity or an organization. Now, like, Citizens for Sensible Zoning is not so far as I know, they're not like an LLC or some sort of like non-profit organization. Like, that's what a group of people decided to start calling themselves in a non-formal tradition. So the town cannot sue them, so they're going with whatever was provided to them first. Like, and this falls into the, like, in a way, this, what Bill is sort of getting into here is like hey, don't attribute malice to something that could be stupidity. And when I say stupidity, I mean not on the part of the select board, I mean on the part of the person making the accusation. I'm sorry to say that about like a townsperson, but honestly, like, it's not like, and it's not even stupidity, it's ignorance. And when I say ignorance, what I mean is like, it's the ignorance on the part of the person making the accusation that the people in charge of the town don't want to do what's best for the town and don't want bad optics. Like, clearly the town suing people that live in the town isn't a good look, like, ever. Like, you don't, like, no, I don't think any town wants to have to deal with that. Like, period. You, like, no, that's just like, why would anybody want to have to deal with that crap? So, like, and I don't know who these people voted for. I wouldn't be surprised if these are people that voted for Bill Taylor and they're really frustrated because they probably voted for him to be in office to fight this kind of thing. You know what I mean? Like, and now maybe they feel like he's not sticking up for them. But the reality is, when these people are making the accusation about, like, people who dared to stand up for, for a democratic process or whatever, that's really, like, lionizing a couple people and assuming that, like, these handful of people somehow are granted the power to speak for the whole town. Like, you know what? I'm sorry. The select board is way more allowed to do that because we did elect them. Like, y'all just some people writing an article in the newspaper, as far as I'm concerned. And without getting too into the guts of what Amendment 15 even was, I mean, like, it was a very protectionist measure. And was sort of pursuant to a really strong reaction in 2018. I think it was 2018, about the form-based code, and just sort of rewriting the way our zoning works. And and this is, I'll have to get back into zoning stuff a little bit more later, but I'm happy to do this, and I'm planning on doing this, but I'm going to actually dig in and explain why there's if you go back, like way back to some of the first videos that we shared on this channel, there's a clip of Ivy Van talking about how the original coding, the original zoning code was incredibly elitist. And in separate conversations with people, I've been told that it's like it's anti-poor people, which obviously this whole live stream is like super anti-poor people. Like, we're very, very pro anybody that's having a hard time making ends meet, or even just like, you know, shit, dude. Like, if you can't afford to go on vacation, I care about you. Like, honestly, you could be able to cover all your bills if you just don't have any extra change to like be happy, and you're like go do something fun, and like you're, you know, the only reason you're making everything work and like you have enough money is because you have to sink 80 or more hours a week into something that you like. Look, like, I get it. But it's important to understand that in a state where like the only broad-based tax that we have is the property tax, and that's how we pay for all of education, and like to suggest ever that we should increase a mandatory lot size, like I'm sorry, like that's just, for me, when I hear that right now, that's not a pro low income people position to take, because every square foot costs you money. Every square foot is more property value. And if you're, the second you say, oh no, you got to have 15 foot instead of 10 foot, like, well, you know what? That's probably going to increase the property value, which is going to cut a slew more people out from being able to buy or rent that property. Well, I mean, rent maybe not as much, but it's still, the prices are set by the property. So yeah, ultimately. And that's like, I will again get into the nitty gritty on this. But realistically, it's, the point I'm trying to make is that the Amendment 15 in a lot of ways was done by a bunch of people that were really worried that somebody was going to come in and mess with what was theirs. Like, they're going to come in and they're going to screw with my property. They're going to build something unsightly in my, my line of view or whatever. Not all that different from the whole thing with the cows. And everybody getting really up in arms about the cows, which, as a side note, and I actually have that, this I actually have, see if I can get this up right now. So I just, okay, I'm going to pull this up for a second because this is real good. Okay, so I just want to throw this out there, okay? The whole cows and lower chaining field thing. I just want to throw up this easement, and people can feel free to debate me on this if possible. This is the original easement for that property, okay? So under use limitations, the property shall be maintained in perpetuity as open space without there being conducted thereon any industrial or commercial activities except agriculture as described below, provided that the productivity capacity of the property to produce agricultural crops shall not be degraded by on-site activities. The purpose of hereof agriculture shall include animal husbandry, floriculture, horticulture activities, and the production of plant and animal products for domestic or commercial purposes. Explain to me how putting some cows down there to graze isn't that exactly in the original easement. So at any rate, this is to serve the point to say that, like, these people are putting themselves up on a pedestal, and they're ultimately attacking a guy that felt very much so put into his position by these folks. And, I don't, I think several people commented on how it was, Bill really let him have it. And I think this is a really great example of, like, I think this is something that this is a bit of a learning experience for Bill, and I'm sure he would be, he'd be happy to say that himself. While this might seem like a hot take, in speaking with him today, like I did have a chat with him today, that he submitted that with the full approval of the select board and town administration. So they all knew he was doing that. They all knew he was submitting that take, and and he did. And I think it's really good. I'll hop back over to what Bill says here for a second. Excuse me. Sorry, Adam. Whew, sorry, dinner. Anywho, Bill says right here, in the suit, the town is not arguing that 15 be thrown out, only that a judge makes sure it's by the letter of the law. If it violates the single purpose rule, an issue raised first by the attorney representing the signers of 15, then it may not be valid. It seems only fair that everything be looked at by a judge. So, like, look, in order to have that happen, you got to file the formal documents. Now, like, it doesn't matter how many question marks or explanation marks you throw at the end of your sentences. This is how things work. Okay? And while we may not necessarily appreciate some of those things, part of what we have to do is, if we don't like those, we need to figure out a way to change them. And we need to get more active, and we need to understand our system. And likely, the thing that we're mad about, we might not actually be that mad about a little further out once we understand why it is the way it is. We might start to see it as sort of like just a part of having to do that, that, like, there's always a cost for doing something. And yeah. So, at any rate, I think, I'm just going to hop down. So he says, so what's the takeaway of this response? It's that the town and its officials can certainly be trusted. We are open, honest, and in my view, go above and beyond to address the concerns of everyone. I have the least amount of experience on the board because I'm the newest. I have come to love the job despite the challenges. I learned extremely quickly that the board and administration are some of the most dedicated people I have come across, and this town is lucky to have them. I didn't know what to expect starting on May 14th, but my experiences have exceeded my wildest expectations. And despite the drama surrounding zoning in town, we remain completely dedicated to making things better. None of us can change the past, but we can certainly work towards a better future, and you can count on us doing just that. Now, look, ultimately, this has just been a lot of really, like, just tough communication, and the fact that ultimately, we gotta keep in mind that in local politics, you do not want to treat, like when I say local, I mean like town, but you really do not want to treat things as zero sum. Especially in a community that's really small like this, where everybody, okay? Like, I can understand that there might be a certain line that has to get crossed once you reach a certain threshold. But even then, that, it's like, I don't know. It's like, I don't want politics to be a zero-sum game like this. I really don't. But unfortunately, it's been made that way by, you know, articles like the one that was posted in Granite Grok. It's when you have people that treat, you know, whoever's not on their side as like you're an other and I need to destroy you. You know what I mean? Who doesn't agree with like points line up with every single thing that you feel. It's like, oh, that's my enemy. I gotta wreck him. I gotta own him. I gotta destroy him. I got, look, like, I don't need an enemy to find meaning in my life. I don't, personally, I don't feel a need to attack anything to get meaning in my life. I mean, like, I feel like discussing things. I feel like talking about stuff that people debate deeply, get really heated about. I think it's important to talk about that stuff, but like I'm not seeking an enemy, and what I believe doesn't require an enemy to exist in order to have it.